Teesside University, so in the northeast of the UK, as I say. My role as Professor of Learning and Teaching at Teesside is very much looking after all of our learning and teaching and enhancement work. A big part of my portfolio is leading the assessment innovation work at the institution, so across the whole institution. So I'm going to try and lean into that experience for you today and share some learning and some thoughts. But I'm going to start with two reflections. I'm not going to ask you to get too collaborative here and interactive. We can come back to these at the end. But I want you to just take a moment, and I want you to think about what matters most in effective assessment design for you. And I want you to try and sum that up in your head in 3 words, or you can have 4 if you like. But just to keep it really concise, what are the top 3 things here that matter most to you in assessment design? I want you to hold those ideas in your head. Think about that. So what is it? What matters most when I'm setting my assignments for my students? What am I looking for? What does matter most in my discipline and what I'm trying to achieve at the end of that? So just give that some thought. It's a bit of a thought experiment, this one, because we're going to hold those ideas in our head, and then I'm going to ask you a second question. And this is where things get a little bit grey and challenging. Okay, so the next one is this. So again, in no more than 3 words. What's going to matter most in 3 years' time? And it's a really interesting and difficult question to consider, because the honest answer, I think, is probably we don't know what's going to matter most in 3 years' time. If you just reflect on the last 18 months to 2 years, what's happened in the context of the AI revolution in education, assessment is having to change. It's having to change at a pace, and in ways that perhaps we weren't, certainly weren't ready for, and B, that we haven't really thought about in any great depth. So some ideas here today, hopefully to tune you into some of those possibilities. But just a bit of a reflective thought experiment there, for, just thinking about what matters most now. Is what matters most now going to matter most in 3 years' time? And really what I'm asking for here, or asking you to think about here, is the value base of your assessments. What are the values that I espouse or want to espouse in the way that I set my assessments up for my students, and the extent to which they are going to be authentic to the multitude of futures that are going to be open to our students in not just 3 years' time, but 3 months' time, perhaps. If we had more time together, I do whole workshops just on these. There's another question that I ask on 3 questions, just to get people thinking about the value base of their assessments. But it's worth just holding that in your heads as we go through things. And I bring this up. That thought experiment's particularly pertinent, I think, right now, given that there's such uncertainty in the assessment landscape in higher education. I've kind of listed here several kind of themes that are coming out of the research, literature and evidence in the assessment domain right now in higher education and education more broadly. I mean, there's an opportunity here to add more, hence the question mark at the end. So, the high risk nature of many of our established assessment practices, very often, we're weighting our assessments at 100%. So students have a one-time opportunity to demonstrate their best work or their learning. And that's high risk. It's also high stress, and that's, student well-being is certainly in the UK, is a big topic right now when it comes to educational design. A lack of relevance to students' future lives. So that going back to that thought experiment there. So this might be relevant right now, but is it going to be relevant for them in the future? And we're not just talking about the first year in employment after they leave us, but actually, lifelong in and through their careers and the many careers that they might have. A limited range of assessment types and formats. If you were to do a bit of an inventory of your course and programs, and you were to categorize the assessments, I think you'd probably find a fairly limited range of formats and types. Exams, written essays, possibly some presentations in there. Definitely does not reflect the diversity of learning and teaching strategies and approaches that we take through higher education. So why is that? We'll maybe get into that a little bit later on. Feedback is often an afterthought in an assessment design, and the ironic point there is feedback's where the learning is. That's where the learning happens. It's where we are able to encourage students to reflect on what they've done, understand the gaps, the holes, the opportunities. So feedback needs to be moved further up the stream, so to speak. Also, AI and assessment integrity, can't move for that right now in my job at the moment. I think we're all in the same space trying to work this out. Got some thoughts on that come a little bit later on. And give us what other themes are you seeing? What other changes are afoot for you in your practice? So it's worth considering there as well. Okay. We need to, I think this is the reason why I'm here. Okay, so the conversations I've been having with Jarek is really trying to unpack the multiple purposes of assessment. We get assessment, what's known as assessment of learning. We get this. This is why, and this is how we're assessed actually in largely in our roles. You know, have we done our job? Are the students performing? Are they achieving the grades that we want them to achieve, or the best grades possible? So this assessment of learning purpose. It's the dominant paradigm of assessment, particularly in the UK. You know, reading Eva Medland's work there. By this we mean the work that students complete that counts towards and constitutes final grades or marks, and then ultimately the classification that they receive. So in the UK we have a classificatory system. And obviously in the US you still have, you know, you have the GPA and the equivalent. Capturing student achievement and demonstrating standards, so it's how we know how well the students are doing, and we can get ideas around progression and attainment of certain standards of work. And it also provides a basis for comparison in terms of student performance as well, so we're able to differentiate the boundaries, the grade boundaries there. So assessment of learning, how we evaluate student performance based on the work that they produce. We know this. There's also assessment for learning. So the process of seeking and interpreting evidence for use by learners. So this is the formative aspect of assessment practice. And these are typically in process. They're active. They're student-led approaches. The draft work that we do, the dialogues that we have, the peer-led work that we might put in place with our students. So it's a real emphasis, shift in emphasis, not just on the summative, which is the assessment of learning, but also the formative, which is the assessment for learning. And we might be familiar with these topics and terms and ideas, but there is a third one. There's a connective third purpose. And I'm introducing this idea of assessment as learning. And this is where David Carlos comes in. He talks about learning-orientated assessment design. So actually designing your assessment to model for the types of learning that you want to see demonstrated by your students through their work. It engages and focuses on authentic problems, issues, challenges, projects. Also utilizes formative assessment strategies as the key mechanism or driver for the student work. And that might include peer feedback, as it says here. Naomi Winston and Rob Nash have done some great work on this. I'm going to be referencing work here. This is your resource. I've developed this as a resource, so I'll share it with Jarek, who can share it with you. And there's a useful resources section at the end, and you can get hold of all of the references. So we need to hold all of the multiple purposes of assessment in our heads when we're thinking about designing for effective assessment. So like I say, we might be familiar with these ideas, but what do they look like in practice? Well, I really like this diagram here from an organization here in the UK called JISC, which is one of the leading kind of ed tech, digital technology organizations and thought leaders in the field in UK higher education. They do work internationally as well, mainly UK. And they talk about how these purposes, these different purposes need to come together. And you can see the way that they've represented it here. I love the fact it's a cog. The assessment for learning is the cog that makes everything go round. Assessment as learning then becomes the operational kind of side of things, where the students are actively learning through experience and developing through that experience their autonomy as learners. So these are active processes. They're not destinations or things to be ticked off a list of making sure that we've completed in terms of competencies or whatever the equivalent is. there are active processes and active components to our assessment design. So we really, if we want assessment with a purpose, we have to be holding all of these ideas together. So what do we mean then when we're thinking about, okay, thinking about purposeful assessment? Well, how do we assess that to promote learning then? What does that mean and what does that look like? Well, all assessment does promote learning in some way. If you think about, I mean, it might be the same in the US. I have done a little teaching over there, but certainly in the UK, we would say that student assessment drives student behavior. So what's the first question our students ask our academic staff when they turn up week 1 on their course? It's typically, what's the assessment and when's it due? Yeah, so they're already thinking about, how do I have to invest my energies and my capabilities, my skills into producing the best possible work to perform the best I can. And that's fine, but that's a product orientated view. That's an instrumental attitude, and it's largely strategic and to be expected when they're paying so much money. But when we're designing assessment to promote student learning, we need to be looking at the other sides of that coin. So there's two sides to that coin. So designing for learning orientated assessment, David Carles's work here, he talks about the role of formative assessment, so assessment for learning, and the need for careful design and planning to ensure that there are a number of things taking place when we're working with our students. So firstly, we need to make sure the work is aligned to key learning outcomes. Are we meeting our learning outcomes here? Are we doing what we're saying we're doing and achieving those ends? We need to think about the engagement and then types of engagement with the tasks that we want to encourage and how that prompts the kind of desired learning we want to see demonstrated. When it comes to assessment, you get what you model for. So what are you modeling for through your assessment designs and how you're setting up your assessment tasks? Task of time to ensure that there's an opportunity for students to benefit from feedback. So building in time and space and not just at the end of the process, but engage students with feedback information so that they can improve their work, and making sure that is relevant, not just to task, but also to their future learning on their course and beyond that point as well. So that learning orientated assessment is very much a process orientation in terms of viewpoint. Then we're into, well, what do we mean by effective assessment feedback? When you're talking about, you say, Sam, you're talking about feedback. Well, what do we mean? Well, Winston and Carlos have written a whole book on this. It's worth a read for sure. It's a wonderful resource. And there's several established features of effective feedback design. So when we're feeding back on our student work, and like I say, that needs to be a process orientation and not just a product orientation. So at the end, it needs to do a number of different things. It needs to help clarify good performance, clear, a map to goals and criteria. It needs to facilitate and develop their ability to self-assess. So tuning them into what good work looks like. It needs to be timely, relevant, and task focused. Because if it's none of those things, then it's just noise, and that's a big problem in higher education. It's a big problem in the UK here. Students have so much noise in and around their studies. How can we set up? Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So audio dropped out there for a minute. So timely, relevant, task focused. Emphasis on dialogue. So where are the opportunities for us to dialogue with our students and for them to dialogue with their peers? Does it harness positive motivational beliefs? Does it build their confidence in the doing of the work? Does it reduce the gap between where we want them to be and where they are now? And does it give us information that can help us to inform our subsequent practice and work with students? So effective assessment design has quite a bit there's quite a bit there for us to think about in practice. The third aspect to this is what Ty and colleagues talk about, developing evaluative expertise. So this is where we focus on the need for learners to understand what constitutes good or quality work. What does a good one look like is a phrase that we use when we're talking about evaluative expertise. What's the first thing you do when you're asked, excuse me, to do anything? You reach for an example, an exemplar, a model. So we need to be able to do the same for our students and allow them to work with and develop their understanding of quality. And that's what we mean by assessment literacy. So the positioning assessment is part of an interactive process that allows them to develop an understanding of assessment practices, processes, criteria, and what that looks like for them in their learning. And this idea of evaluative judgment. So we do this all the time. Think about the peer review process when you're writing academic articles. This is effectively what we're doing. We're tuning ourselves into understanding the criteria for that particular journal, for that particular kind of work. And it's an iterative process, as we would expect. And it's no different for our students. So these are core ideas around when we're thinking about assessing to promote student learning. I'm just trying to give you the kind of the broader kind of components here. But more recently, obviously, I mean, it seems like a distant, nightmarish memory now. We did have a pandemic pretty recently in recent history. And excuse me, we did do some learning from that pandemic, although I would argue that we probably didn't do enough. But there's certainly in the literature you see now and the way that universities are setting up their assessment strategies and approaches calls for greater flexibility in the way that we go about our assessment. And Warner and colleagues talk about flexible assessment as providing students with the opportunity to take on greater responsibility for their learning in activities or through activities that better reflect their learning needs. So rather than having a one size fits all approach, we actually have a more flexible and agile system which is able to meet students where they're at in terms of their learning and in terms of their circumstances. And in the literature, we see quite a bit of innovation in this space. So diverse and authentic methods, leaning into methods, for example, like collaborative working or project work, e-portfolios, synchronous or asynchronous presentations, emphasizing how students are prepared for assessment work. So how and where are you preparing your assessment, your students to demonstrate their best work through their assessments, for example? You might talk about the assessment in a seminar, but where is that preparatory work taking place? And this plays into the point there around scheduling assessments and thinking about the long-term development of our students, not just for the task, but beyond that. And that comes in different forms, so the mixes of assessment forms and different foci with an element of choice. And this idea of choice, which is really, really interesting. And we, colleague Paul Cheston and I have done some work on this, trying to embed flexible assessment here at Teesside University. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And there's kind of two key components here. So using a variety of assessment approaches and methods. So giving students an equal opportunity to demonstrate their best work, but giving them a choice in how they do that. That allows us to value the diversity of the students in the room, but also it's a bit more inclusive in terms of opening up rather than closing down on assessments for students, and incorporating choice as well. So, you know, there are a number of different ways that you can demonstrate achievement of the learning outcomes on this particular module or course. Here are those choices, and it's up to you depending on how you see best fit. So this whole idea of negotiated choice with students builds in that sense of ownership that flexibility brings about. So might be slightly new terminology for you there, but there's lots and lots of if you link out to the reading there, these ideas I think are starting to creep into our conversation. So I mentioned about the work we're doing at Teesside University. This is flexible assessment at TU. This is the principles that we use when we're thinking and working and designing our assessments. So flexible assessment is inclusive, learning focused, and shared and transparent. I'm not going to go through all of that there. That's for you. You can play around with that. So these are our kind of three dimensions of flexible assessment. So what I'm going to go through each in turn, and I'm going to give you a bit of an insight into what we mean by these things, and then there's some reflective aspects to this as well, which you, as like I said, this is a resource. You can take it away. You can think about your own work in due course. So when we say flexible assessment is inclusive, we're talking about there are opportunities to personalize student learning, that build student ownership and an agency through a diversity of approaches that allow for a certain degree of learner choice, but at the same time are designed to be practical and realistic in what we're asking students to do. We're not, we're not having them overreach. It's developmentally appropriate, and that it's kept simple and accessible. We're not setting up, or we encourage our staff not to set up work that isn't accessible for certain students. So don't have access or need for a certain software that's only campus based, for example. That's just not going to work, is it? So thinking about inclusivity in the broadest possible way. So here's what I mean by some reflective. So when you can use these. This is what I have my staff here at Teesside do on a regular basis, is reflect on their work using these prompts. So where using a variety of assessment, for example, to what extent does your assessment do one or a number of these things? Provide every student with an equal opportunity to demonstrate their achievement. If you're doing one assessment point and there's one way of doing things, is that really an equitable opportunity there? And equally, when it comes to choice and flexibility, to what extent are you allowing for choice in the topics, methods, and criteria that your students are being assessed or producing in terms of the work, and also assessed by? So food for thought there, and you're free. This is for you, so you can reflect on this at your leisure. Learning focused. Well, we encourage our staff to take a course-wide view, so not just on a modular level or a course level, use language of course, but actually the full program. Take a full program view and how the assessments are knitted together, are woven together. There's a focus on improvement. Assessment must be about improvement, improving students, moving students forward. Probably best to do that through authentic tasks that hold that relevance and meaning for them, but also that puts feedback to work. And feedback is not something that students should receive just at the end, but also throughout the process, as we said. And we do that through prioritizing formative opportunities and making space for meaningful dialogue. So when we say learning focused, these are the kind of things that we're meaning. So when you're thinking about reviewing your own practice in being learning focused, here's some prompts for you. So embedding formative opportunities, for example, to what extent are you providing early formative feedback on learner practice as an indication of how well they're doing in relation to the work that's been set? So where are those early formative opportunities for students to track their progress and also then learn how to enhance their work? So again, series of prompts there for you to consider. Shared and transparent, not last but not least for me. This is almost the glue that holds things together. So if we're not clear with our guidance and our expectations of students, what can we hope for? What are we modeling for here? We've got to be clear with that, on that with our students. We also need to make sure that we're making use of shared activities. It brings about the other two. So bringing, and also the happy accident there is in sharing our perceptions and our experiences. We often learn from others in terms of how to improve our own work. So that's a really important consideration. Be pragmatic about student assessment, student support. So where can students gain support from you? Manage those expectations, but better yet, build it into the assessment process. And the final one there is just taking on a whole new meaning in light of AI. The pervasiveness of AI in higher education right now is, let's set up our Can you hear me now, Eric? Sorry, my audio keeps dropping out. I do apologize. Promote ethical working practices and thinking about that at the point of design. And again, what we get what we model for. What are we modeling for in terms of that integrity of practice? So when we're reviewing our practice, we can think of several things in this space. Let's think about assessment, student assessment literacy, for example. So to what extent are you nurturing a practical understanding of what constitutes good work with your students? So how are you engaging students with notions of quality in relation to the assessment work that you've set and the work that they'll be producing for you? And that's part of that shared understanding, but it's also about then being transparent in terms of our expectations. And this is another thing that's free to you. So I did some work with an organization called 1HE. They have a big presence in the US now, actually. And this is a free online course. So if you wanted to spend a bit more time thinking about working with flexible assessment in your own practice, you'll have to register and sign up, of course, but you'll get access to the course, and it's going to take you around 20 minutes. There's some key lessons, but there's plenty of reflective work to be done in that space, and you might find useful. So you can scan that QR code and it will take you straight out to the 1HE site. So please do check it out. Like I say, only able to give you a whistle-stop tour today. That's a bit of a deeper dive into working with flexible assessment. Oh, okay, it's a bit of a lag here. Apologies. Okay, well, let's look now at widening the lens of assessment. So when we've introduced some key ideas, those three core kind of ideas of learning orientated assessment, assessment feedback, and evaluative expertise. Well, this is really encouraging us, and obviously wanted to develop that purposeful assessment, looking at all of the purposes of assessment and making sure they're embedded in what we do, requires a widening of the lens, not just a task-focused approach, but a more holistic outlook. And in doing that, we need to think about a few things. We need to think about, at the point of design, how we consider the learning journey and experience of our student, not just on the task itself, but how it connects up with the other tasks that they're engaged with. So where does this task sit in the relation to their learning journey? What service does that provide for them? And this also then requires us to think about the coherence and connectedness of the task to that learning journey. So rather than having a set of nodal points that are loosely connected for students to navigate, let's have a clear sense at the point of design how these things connect up and what these tasks are doing in the context of their learning journey. And this requires us to hold two ideas of practice, or two notions of practice, in our heads at the same time. So if we're going to do this, we're going to widen the lens for assessment here. We need to embed assessment practice with an S and assessment practice with a C. So assessment practice with a C, the outcomes we're familiar with. Yeah, there are learning outcomes. There are where the alignment to our tasks are set. The practice with an S, it's a process focus and means certain things, and I'm going to go into that just now. So these, this is the spectrum of practice that we need to be thinking about if we're going to move into this space of assessing for learning. So practice with outcomes does change slightly when we're looking at it through this particular lens. So we're really trying to encourage active participation of the widest range of our students, not just those that are most capable, but actually those perhaps with certain needs as well. We need to provide students with an equivalent rather than identical opportunity to demonstrate their ability. This whole idea of a particular design or task being the one way of doing things or the best way of doing things is a bit of a misnomer. There's no way of getting an identical opportunity here to students. It is only ever equivalent if we design it appropriately. And to do that, we need to embed assessment arrangements and processes that are prospective. They look forward, they are future facing, constitutive, they weave together the student, the learning that they've done to produce that work, and are relevant to the student learning that's taking place. In terms of processes then, so that's outcomes, that's one side, but on the other side, two sides to the same coin, as I said earlier on, we need to think about, okay, in terms of processes, clearly they need to be a bit more adaptive. So we need to be able to, and this is where the formative comes in, because through the formative, we're able to get immediate insight into where students are at in the context of their learning. So we might set up we might be doing some draft work with students, and we get immediate feedback as to where they're at in relation to the learning outcomes. We can then shift and change accordingly. But this requires us to use integrated activities. So again, we can't expect to do this at the end of a course. It's too late. We need to scaffold a model for the kind of engagement that we want to see students play out here. And we do that, again, in dialogue through developmental feedback with our students. So the dialogues we're having, the conversations, the discussions, the work that they're producing, and then the conversations we have as a consequence of us reading and feeding back on that work, allows us to be more active, participative, and dialogic in our role and relationship with students, which means we are more agile and flexible as a consequence. So it's important we hold these two ideas of practice in our heads. So really the doing, so thinking about learning as doing, as a verb as opposed to a noun, and holding both of these ideas in our heads when we're thinking about designing our assessments and the work that we do with our students. Now, assessment practice, this is helpful because assessment practice takes on a very different meaning in the context of the time we find ourselves in. So in the time of generative AI, some really useful work here. I encourage you to go away and have a bit of a deep dive and a read. So Margaret Behrman and colleagues, 2 articles here. The first one talks about the new work of digital assessment in the era that we find ourselves in. So think about the practice. What are we wanting to model for through our digital assessments and the designs we're putting in place? Well, they talk about 3 different purposes. Well, we need to encourage them to be able to use certain digital tools and develop certain digital literacies, but also just as importantly, we need to be thinking about the human capabilities that come along with that. So we might do purpose 1 and 2, but forget about 3. This is the new work they talk about. We need to be thinking about all of these things together. And then the second point at the bottom there, so Behrman and Ajawi's work, this is a fascinating article, really worth a read. And they talk about assessment just being another component or tool within this social technical ecosystem that students have available to. And it's the same for us. It's just another tool, like Google search was 20 years ago. Although my students don't believe me, it is now just a tool. It's part of the social technical ecosystem that we use on a daily basis, as AI will become in the not too distant future, and is well on the way to being there. But think about the new work. Think about the models for practice in and through our digital assessment designs that we put into place. Some really useful insights there, because this changes practice again. And when we think about the practice with the C, the outcomes, well, we are needing to embrace authentic assessment and authentic assessment environments more explicitly through the work we do. And I've kind of bracketed here this idea of conditional learning. What are we modeling for here? What conditions are we putting into place in and through our assessment and wider learning and teaching designs and strategies that condition for the kind of learning that we want to see and model for? Integrated assessment designs. Think multimodal. I don't think we have a choice. There's very little work that we do now, when you really think about it, that is monomodal. Yeah, there's very little. In fact, this isn't monomodal now. This is multimodal. But think about that at the point of design. It's a really useful thing to consider. It's like, okay, what are the different modalities here that I can engage or have my students engage with to best represent their learning? Encourage multiple submission formats. So again, that choice component. So, students are used to being able to pretty much personalize and own everything that they do. That is already part and parcel of the conversation in higher education for sure. But what about for assessment? That requires adaptable assessment designs, of course, and possibly negotiated criteria. So, I've been on this journey through my work. I would like to be assessed against these criteria, for example, in addition to the criteria that you've set. So there's plenty of work out there around negotiated criteria, which I think has a role to play here. In terms of changing practice with an S, well, we have to lean more heavily into formative opportunities and processes. We need to create opportunities for more social learning. So with an emphasis on reflection, or it's, with the conversation we're having at Teesside right now is having a greater degree of reflexivity portrayed in our assessment designs. And that places plenty of emphasis on our feedback and how we sequence that feedback activity and work with students, and creating low stakes opportunities for students rather than only providing them with high stakes, high risk, high stress tasks. that's not where the learning happens typically, right? So again, where does the learning happen? It happens in the process of doing the work and through the feedback and through those opportunities to engage. So again, assessment practice is changing in the time of generative AI. We need to think about practice in the broadest possible ways. Here's some thoughts and ideas on how we might do that. I'm coming to close now, which is perfect. So I'm going to introduce you. This is the, I'm calling this the Swiss cheese paradox. Okay, bear with me here. This is an analogy. Okay, there's two analogies now, two ways of thinking about these two ideas of practice that I've introduced. This was introduced to me as an idea, the International Assessment and HE conference in Manchester in the UK last year, earlier this year, sorry. So you think about a slice of Swiss cheese as being our assessment design. Now, if there's one slice of Swiss cheese, then there's lots of holes, lots of opportunities for students to fall through the gaps, and lots of gaps in the learning that potentially might be lost through those holes. Bear with me. We layer those slices of Swiss cheese up. All of a sudden, through that layering, through the multiple opportunities, through the different weaving of formative processes with those summative tasks, we start to build a bit more of a robust and inclusive assessment design. Yeah, so not just having one opportunity, but having multiple opportunities, not just having one way of doing things, but having a choice between multiple ways of doing things, hence the Swiss cheese, okay? And there's always going to be holes. There's no perfect design here, but by building up those layers, creating multiple opportunities, we're able to reduce some of that risk and hopefully reduce some of the anxiety around assessment as well. So that's practice, that's an outcomes, practice outcomes, right, with a C, right? Practice with an S, so process, again, bear with me, okay? The other analogy that I only yesterday, so you're getting this fresh out of my head, only yesterday introduced to me by Mark Butler here at Teesside University. He was talking about working with generative AI with his students. He says, we can look at this a couple of ways, thinking about how we're modeling for this for our students. We can model for mass-produced assessment. So and then he started to talk about, think about furniture development and production. Now, on the left here, this is the best possible representation I could find in the short time I had. A mass-produced chair, something from IKEA, perhaps. But we might want there's a place for mass production. Of course there is. We need to know that students are able to do certain things and competencies are met and so on and so forth. We need a certain degree of mass production. But is that an authentic representation of who the student is and of their learning? Does it say anything about the process that they've gone through, the models that or the strategies they've applied, and what they've changed as a consequence? So we've got the mass-produced chair on the left, and we've got the more creative, personalized, more individualistic chair on the right, which is perhaps a more representative of the journey that the student has been on. So we have a choice to make when we're thinking about assessment practice with an S here, and I'm really trying to focus on that process. What do we want to focus on? Is it mass production? Because we will get what we model for. Or do we want those more creative, human-centered, capabilities-focused outputs, which better represent the processes and strategies that students have been through? I must admit the chair on the right doesn't look particularly comfortable. So that's, that's for me to work out as I iron out the analogy, but you get the idea. So just to give you some a bit of a lighter touch kind of description there. I'm going to come over to you for questions now. I had an hour's chunk. I wanted to leave some time for questions, and if there's anything that we can follow up on, it'd be wonderful to do so. And there, I promised you, there was a list of useful resources. These are in addition to what we've covered in the talk itself. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I'm going to come back to you.
Hi, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Sam, thank you for your wonderful presentation. I just had some quick questions for you. You mentioned, formative assessments, authentic assessments. And you also mentioned AI. I think AI is ahead of us, right? 10 years ahead of us or 5 years ahead of
Mm.
us. And with that being said, how do you incorporate all those type of assessments into AI, and how can it be done? And how can you make that available for everyone?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And when you crack that, could you please let me know? Um, no, I don't. Here's okay. If you're looking for definitive responses, you're not going to get one from me, right? You're going to get a very Socratic response here, because I don't think we are never going to get ahead of this. So typically in higher education, we try and the initial response was to design AI out, right? So no, we just design it out. We went right knee deep into the academic integrity rabbit hole, and we realized actually no, this is too fast paced. It's too fluid. So an emphasis on authenticity, but it's what kind of authenticity are we talking to here? We're certainly seeing more emphasis on kind of human authenticity. So I mentioned about the difference in practice with a C, practice with an S. Now, if we just focus on practice with a C, outcomes, and we continue down the conventional route of producing assessment artifacts. So students produce an artifact, yeah, an essay, a presentation, a piece of, a poster. I don't know. You use your imagination. Well, that can all now be done relatively immediately with many different generative AI tools. So, what was the value and the purpose of the work in the first place? Yeah. So, actually, shifting on to a process view, I'm actually more interested in the journey you've gone on as a student to produce the work. So, switching from an artifact, an outcome, to a process, I think gets us towards this broader notion of authenticity. I want an authentic representation of the learning that you've gone through in producing this work, because that then generates a certain level of self-awareness from the student in terms of, okay, well, I can be clear on what I've learned and how I've learned. And that, moving into an uncertain world and uncertain futures, is going to be eminently more valuable to students. Does that make
That
sense?
it does, because you mentioned the journey in the the learning skills. Because at the end, you can ask this audience to design a chair, and those chairs are going to be totally different,
Yeah.
right? And so, yes.
But my response to that is it's as it should be, right? It's as if learning, we're dealing with a subjective phenomenon here. Yeah. I'm loving the interaction in the chat, but all the chat
Mm.
tells me is we've got 40, 50 plus people in the room, active in the room. They're all having different experiences of the same thing. Yeah, they're taking different things away. They're sharing different ideas. So there's no one way of doing this. There's no objective way of assessing this in a perfect sense. That's not going to happen. If anything, AI is pushing us into the process orientated view of assessment. And I'm excited by that. I'm here for that for sure. So I'm loving the fact that the illustration. I don't know which illustration you're referring to. If it's the Swiss cheese one, you're welcome. Um, But like I say, a bit of fun, but hopefully that helps you kind of just consolidate some of those ideas. If we are to just, if here's the assessment model, we have 15-week modules here. Okay, so give you an example of a module here. Week 1, here's the assessment. Here's the criteria. Here's the task. This is what we're going to assess you on. This is the kind of things we'd expect you to produce. See you in week 9 when you submit it. Yeah, that's a one slice of Swiss cheese approach right there. Yeah, plenty of opportunities for students to go off on tangents, and if we're not setting things up accordingly and engaging them along the way in ways that are timely, relevant, and meaningful, giving them feedback on where they're at in terms of their learning as along that process. So this is where you can see the layers starting to come in. And yes, it's not perfect. There's still going to be holes, but that's what learning's about. So for me, the ball game for higher education is student learning development. That's the ball game. Yeah, not to churn out X number of graduates on paper are able to do these things. that no longer is going to stand up. It is going to be, what is the differentiating factor between these human beings? And I think that is where, really focusing on learning, which again, like I say, should be the ball game, is most worth our time. Are there any other questions? Jarrett, do you have any questions? Mary, do you have any questions, I wonder?
Sam, so I think that you really used a number of visuals and really great analogies. This really certainly puts assessment discussion in a great perspective for us. The question that I would have for you is if you could just go back for a moment to this student agency issue, right? The ownership of their learning. Because it certainly seems like there's different levels of well, let's just say maturity, right? A different as we go through our educational systems, decisions made at the 5th grade level are different from those made at the 12th grade level, and then there's decisions that are made at the college level. How do you think, again, considering AI and your analogy with cheese makes perfect sense. How isn't the student agency becoming sort of like a what I would say the holy grail of our discussions here? Is that what we are after? Because again, we could talk about assessment, but ultimately students are the ones who need to see the benefit of it, and that depends on their maturity level, I suppose, and how they look at their own learning. Well, what is it that what's in it for me, right? Ultimately, that's the question they need to be asking versus us telling them you're on the right track.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's ever so complex, multidimensional, isn't it? There's just so many dimensions to it. I think we were talking in preparation for this talk, weren't we, about the notion of self-regulated learning. Really that's the mechanism to achieving agency, is developing students' ability to self-regulate their work, their learning, because that develops an explicit self-awareness, an appreciation of what it is I'm doing, why I'm doing it, why it matters, why it's valuable to me, what I can do with it, so it's value beyond the task itself. But more importantly, I've had an opportunity to shape that thing, the outcome, the task, or whatever. And in the doing of that shaping, they're learning something about themselves. I've made this decision, I've made this choice. In making that decision, did it work in my favor? Did I learn anything here? Was I able to produce the best possible work here? And if, there's always learning to be had, and even if we do set things up in high stakes summative and it's an exam based thing, they will still take away learning. But is it the kind of learning that we want to see? Is it the kind of learning that is going to shape and influence their agency? Probably not, because they've got to invest something of themselves in the process. And that's the key point for me. It's what have you invested in this process? It's all a decision making exercise. You've made this decision. There's a risk to that, and obviously students don't like taking risks. It's very expensive to take risks in higher education for a student. However, it's the only way that we learn, because ultimately we either succeed or we fail. So when you talk about self-regulatory learning, we're actually trying to tune students into the learning strategies that they've applied in the production of the work for us. So, okay, you've produced this piece of work. How did you get there? What were the steps that you took? What approaches did you take in producing the work? Who did you talk to? What did you learn from that interaction? What didn't work? And then what did you do as a consequence? So these are all ingredients in developing that sense of agency, but it really does, the locus of that has to start with the student.
So, and the decision-taking process, right? The decision-making process is a skill that can be taught, in a sense that, just like you described in that process of trial and error, right? It doesn't have to be perfect 100%. You just have to know that that's at your disposal. That's how you're going to discover reality. And I would like to follow up on Aaron's question here in the chat. Aaron says that, what is really a purpose of learning? We are not hearing much about employer needs, right? Because ultimately, again, when we leave the classroom, there is no blue book, there is no GPA anymore, there is no high-stake tests anymore. It's my life. And how, the skill and competency that I acquire in those discussions, just like you just described, in the process of learning, that's what's going to matter ultimately, right? Rather than the paper record, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, we try and model for here. It's something that's written about quite heavily, actually. This link to employability. So the graduate opportunities and so on. So how do we reduce the immediacy between student as learner and student as future graduate? Yeah, and one of the quickest routes into that is engaging employers in a dialogue around what matters most to them. So when we talk about what matters most, this is not a two-sided conversation. It's actually a three-sided conversation when you think about it. Because when we're designing our courses, modules, and the like, what matters most to us is fine, but to the extent, to what extent does that also matter most to employers? Because we do have a role to play in that, but equally the employers have a role to play in doing that. So we kind of take a design thinking approach, a reverse design thinking approach, if you like, and we work it, and it's really how, and you can do this through your assessment designs. How do you set up your assessment designs as a broker point for those conversations with industry? So, and then you can bring in authentic tasks, live project briefs, bring in employers or industry into for panel presentations, or even being clients for students through their projects. You can't move for the authentic dialogue there, but also you can't move for the idea of value that the employer then imparts on what students are doing. It's the irrelevance of that is immediate for them. So how can we reduce the immediacy for students is a key question, I think, is behind Erin's point there. And there's a number of different ways of doing that. And we can do that through the design. But remember, assessment is just one component. And Mary's going to talk about learning and teaching in a more general sense. We must remember that as well. You can get too bogged down. You can get very, very narrow in our focus on assessment. Yes, it might drive student behavior, but it's not all that matters.
Can I shift the subject for 2 seconds because we only have a few minutes left? I'd love to hear you think out loud about class size and the scale as an issue with assessment. I certainly am struggling with that with my faculty.
Yeah, I hear your pain, Amy. I do. Scalability is interesting, isn't it? Because on paper, the multimodal digital landscape in which we work, in one sense, has made scale a minor consideration. We can reach a lot of students all at the same time. They have access to all of the same information. But when we're trying to scale effective assessment in the ways that we're talking about today, it's a real challenge. And something I get our staff to think about is, leaning into that idea of shared activities that I mentioned earlier on. So we hundreds of students. We have some of our chemical engineering courses, for example, have 600 students in a class. They have to split the class down the middle, and you have 300 student lecture. It's a mess. But how do you? And there's a number of staff there doing super work in using that idea of shared activity. So you running that as an asynchronous and an asynchronous thing. It does require a lot of upstream thinking and design, and I call it that on purpose. So moving everything upstream, thinking about this upstream, what do we want to model for downstream? Well, we need to model for that upstream. So shared collaborative documents, shared project work, phased project work, you can, and bring in, and more importantly, however, something I must mention is if we're wanting students to collaborate at scale or in certain ways, we need to allow them and prepare them for the doing of that. So how do we model for the kinds of collaborative work that we want students to engage with? How do we model for them to successfully navigate high scale, large scale work? These are all important employability skills, of course, because they could be working for multinational companies and working globally, and so there are clear lines to relevance here in terms of industry. But it is a challenge, of course it is, but we are slowly moving past our normative conventions of transmission modes of delivery. And this really does, these kinds of questions are fantastic because I can clearly see you thinking. But so making use of those digital tools, the modalities that we have available to us, thinking in process terms, but also thinking about those shared activities. Students don't have to take their lead from us all of the time. And a lot of the time, creating the opportunities for social learning, as we said earlier on, a lot of the learning is done in and amongst themselves, and we can model for that too.